Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two of the Microsoft Navigating Accessibility Features in Microsoft Word. Thank you for attending. Hope everyone's having a good intro to the holiday week. And we're having good weather. Here in Sacramento, it's quite cold, but I appreciate it. Where's everybody calling in for or joining from today? You know, a lot of us ability tools, the ones that you see on there, we're in Sac or Stockton, I think. I'm gonna give it about 2 more minutes for everybody to join. So if you wanted to throw it in the chat where you're at, how you're doing, anything else that you might want to say, throw that in the chat, and we'll get started in about 2 minutes.
They originally didn't look like they had access to the chat, but now we should. So
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Let's see, we got Long Beach. Oh, hi, DRC. Palm Springs. Hope it's warm there. Visalia, San Francisco. RICV, hi there. Hello. San Mateo, thank you for joining us. Winters, hey there. You're close to us. San Francisco, how's the weather there today? More Long Beach, hello. Wow, that's a good day in San Fran, especially in the winter. Happy holidays, Samantha. Hope everyone's in good spirits. Hey, Teddy. All right. Well, as everybody continues to join, I'm going to go ahead and get started with a little bit of our accessibility features for today. It'll be quick, and then we'll get started. I'm going to share my screen. One moment, please. All righty, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Amora, and I will be moderating today's Microsoft Word webinar, part two. For audio description purposes, I am a biracial woman in her 30s with tan skin. I got some thick glasses on today and black slicked back hair in a nice bun. First off, here at CFILC Ability Tools, and I'm sure Microsoft as well, we take accessibility very seriously. So let's do a really quick accessibility check before we get started. This meeting is indeed being recorded. The slide deck that will be presented today, as well as the recording, will be automatically emailed to all of you once edits are complete. It usually takes us less than 24 hours to get it over to you. The recording will be archived additionally on our Ability Tools YouTube channel. Additionally, here is in the chat now is the recording link from part one of the navigating accessibility features in Microsoft Word. In case you missed it, you can access it there. On the screen currently is a screenshot of the Zoom toolbar. For this meeting, we have enabled the Q&A, the chat, closed captions, and raised hand features, which are circled in red on the screen. Please note that there will be verbal image descriptions taking place throughout the presentation of images or videos that are displayed as well. Next up, captions. They're displayed on the screen using the CC icon. If you would like to access the captions today, you can do so by going to the meeting controls, found on the bottom of your screen and select the CC icon. Here you can gain access to the automatic captioning. We have a captioner joining us today. Thank you again, Eileen. These will be incredibly accurate captions shown in Zoom. To access these, you can use the stream text link as well, or just use the Zoom. They're all the same. We have dropped in the chat the stream text link. That's a great option if you need to change the font size, font color, or make the captioning a full screen option. On the screen displayed currently are the Q&A and raise hand icons. Please note that the main chat is reserved for networking and interacting with each other, so please have fun connecting. But any questions that you might have should be entered into the Q&A that's located in the meeting controls at the bottom of your screen. There's an icon displayed with 2 quote bubbles. Or if this is a more accessible option, you can signal raising a hand with the raise hand icon, a function also located in the meeting controls at the bottom of your screen. We're going to be doing a Q&A at the end today of the presentation to ensure that we're able to get everything done and have a good amount of time for questions at the end. We're going to try our best to answer everything that you have. So going through that Q&A section will probably be your best bet at making sure. But we'll go through the chat as well if you on accident put it in there. Please note that today, although Peter is extremely knowledgeable on this subject, he's not necessarily here to give us direct support right now, tech-wise, on today's call. So if you have any direct feedback or questions regarding the Microsoft product Word itself, please access the feedback link that's also going to be dropped in the chat. We will be providing information on how to access Microsoft's accessibility team as well at the end of today's webinar. Thank you all for sitting through my little bit of housekeeping today, and I will now hand it off today to our presenter, Peter.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I am going to start sharing my screen. Let's see. Thank you. So I'm Peter Wu from the Microsoft team. I am a software engineer there and really excited to be here talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you to everybody who joined the first part of this webinar a couple of weeks ago, where we covered a lot of accessibility features and assistive technologies that you can use together with Word if you have disabilities to help make the experience easier and enable you to use all of the functionality there to create documents. So today we're going to cover a different and related topic about creating documents in Word that are accessible to people with disabilities. And so this is applicable to everyone who creates documents, and especially those who are creating documents for their colleagues or friends or family members or loved ones or whoever else that may have disabilities. And the reality is that 1 in 5 people worldwide have a disability, and 70% of them are not apparent. So even if you don't realize it, if you're sending your documents to any sizable audience, there's a good chance that somebody in that audience has disabilities and would benefit from having a document that is accessible. And you don't know who you would be excluding if you don't do that. So people learn to create documents probably very early on. Now that computers are so pervasive, people are learning it in kindergarten or earlier. But you might not have learned some of the techniques into making those documents accessible. And that's what I'm going to cover today. You'll learn about some of the things you need to consider. And not only that, there's some techniques and some things to look out for. You really want to make it habit to go back, and if you're used to doing things a certain way, it takes a little time to relearn and try to do things a little bit differently to make sure that the documents are accessible. So I'm going to be going through a number of video demonstrations, and I'll describe what's going on as we're doing that. The first thing I want to cover is that it's very important to ensure that the text in your document has sufficient contrast. People with low visual acuity and people who are colorblind and have light sensitivity, they can all benefit from having text that has higher contrast. So you can use colors to give it some flair and style, but just be mindful of which colors you use in which places. So I have on the screen now Word for Windows, and it's a pretty simple document. This is really the handout document that I provided, and some of the text has been colored for emphasis reasons. And what I'm going to do is look at this check accessibility button that's on the ribbon, or actually it says accessibility investigate on the status bar. I can click either of those, and it opens up a pane on the right called the accessibility assistant. And it did an automatic check, and it found that one of the words in the document didn't have sufficient contrast. And then I was able to go into some tools to go fix that problem. It gave me some suggested colors that I could apply that would have enough contrast. And I could also choose from the color picker with a filter applied so that it only shows the colors with sufficient contrast. And by doing that, I've changed it to a similar color as the original one, but a little bit darker so that it has enough contrast with the white background in the document. So that's a quick way to find where you may have used colors that are that don't have enough contrast, and to make some adjustments to those colors so that they do have enough contrast. And we're following the WCAG industry standard of ensuring that text that is less than 18 point or 14 point bold has at least a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. Or if it's larger text that is 18 point or 14 point bold or larger, that it have at least 3 to 1 contrast. So that's an important step to do when you're creating your documents. Accessibility Assistant will help you out with that. It will not find all cases where the text doesn't have enough contrast. There are certain cases with like graphics overlaying pictures and cases like that. And if you happen to see something like that, you may want to just check the contrast of that manually and make adjustments as needed for that type of content as well. Okay, and then the next topic to cover that is similar and along similar lines is that when you use color, sometimes people will use the color to convey information. They will color code the information. And it's okay to do that as long as you aren't using color alone to convey that information. And I'll show you this by way of example. Now I'm showing on the screen Word for Windows with a document that has a chart in it. The chart has 2 lines on it, and it has a legend on the right side of the chart. It's showing that the blue line is showing the sales for Van Arsdale, and the orange line is showing the sales for a competitor. Now the problem with this is that you don't know what the meaning of this chart is unless you can read the legend on the right. Like if I were to take the legend away, you would just see two lines and you don't know which is which. Okay, so in order to read the legend, you need to be able to discern the difference between the blue and orange colors. So what if you are colorblind? What would this experience look like? So I'm going to do a quick simulation of that by going into Windows settings, accessibility, color filters, and I'm going to turn on the grayscale filter, which is kind of like monochromacy, which is a form of color blindness. And we'll see that now the lines on the chart are both shades of gray, and now it's really hard to tell which line is which. So now what I'm doing is reformatting the chart in a different way, where I apply a data label to one of the data points on the chart, and that data label can contain various things like the value. In this case, what I really want it to contain is the series name. So I make those formatting adjustments in the formatting pane. And now what I have is a data label next to a point on the chart that has the names Van Arstel and competitor, the series names. And with that, I don't need the legend anymore. So I get rid of that, and I can read this chart even if I can't discern the different colors. So I've now made this chart colorblind friendly. And then when I'm done with that process, I can go turn off the filter and see what it looks like in color again. So it's okay to use the colors, but don't use the colors alone to communicate the information about which series is which in a chart. This kind of technique is sometimes used in tables or in highlights on text and things like that. You just have to look out for where you're using that technique and make sure that you have other means of communicating the information. So, in this case, it's direct text labels, but it could also be through the use of shapes and patterns and other kinds of annotations to help people be able to discern the difference, the differences there. Okay, and by doing that, you'll make the content readable by more people. Another thing you can do to help people who have low vision understand and read your content more easily is to make sure that the document reflows well. And Word is kind of geared toward creating documents that fit on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. That's kind of the traditional way that documents were made. But increasingly, a lot of the content is published online and consumed electronically, where you're not confined to a fixed width page and you have more flexibility in terms of how the content lays out and flows. In this example, I have a document with a 4-column table in it. And it formats pretty nicely on this wide screen that I have. But I'll show you where it can be problematic to have content like a 4-column table that has to be pretty wide in order to be readable. So you can see just scrolling through and showing you the 4-column table and how, well, in print layout, you actually see that it's too wide for an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But I will go into the web view and zoom to 200%, and you'll see in that case that the table's too wide, and some of the content on the right side is getting cut off. It makes it hard to read because you have to scroll horizontally back and forth in order to read all the content. So here's a technique you can use. You can get rid of this preferred width on the table and allow the table to auto size to the width of the window. So now, even at 200% zoom or even higher zoom, the table will not go off the right edge of the window. Now it more easily is readable because the layout has adapted to the space available. And this is especially nice when this is like included in an email, for example, and then the email is read on a phone where you've got a narrower screen. This ensures that the content flows better on that kind of form factor. And now here's another alternative to how you could format this information, because 4 columns may just be too wide. Even after you have it reflow into the width of the window, it may just make the columns too skinny to really read effectively. So here's an alternative layout for the content where I've taken each row of the table and stack the information vertically where I do have enough space, and just put them into separate boxes. And so in this type of layout, it's longer in terms of how much vertical scrolling I have to do, but it will reflow and fit within the width of a window more easily, because we're not trying to cram in 4 columns all into that space. So keep that in mind. I know tables are a popular way of communicating information, but making them too wide and having too many columns can make it difficult to read sometimes. Okay, the next thing I'm going to get into is how to make the content in your document accessible to people who are blind or low vision who use a screen reader, where they are not consuming the content in a visual manner, but rather relying on semantic information that's put into the content and the order and structure of that content within the document. And these things are invisible. I mean, so as somebody authoring the document, you might not even realize some of that stuff is there or is missing, but it's essential for anybody who's consuming the document using a screen reader. And so one of the things to pay attention to is alt text on pictures and other graphics. I'm showing now a Word for Windows in a document, and it has a photograph of a gentleman here. And you don't know that, like, if you're not able to see the content, then you might miss out on what is here. And what you can do as an author is select this document. Sorry? Sorry, I just wanted to first show you what the experience is like for somebody who uses a screen reader. They read through the content, and if this picture doesn't have a description with it, then they don't know what's there, right? So what you want to do is provide something in text, in words, that describes this picture, so that the people that are using a screen reader can understand this content better. So what you do is select the picture, or in this case, there's a little accessibility reminder next to the picture, which notes that you should add alt text to this picture, and brings up a box where you can go and type that in. And then the accessibility reminder goes away. Another way to do it is from the context menu, you can go to view alt text, and that'll open up the alt text pane on the right, which will show you that alt text or let you make edits to it as needed. So in this case, this is the CEO of the company, and he's pictured here to really kind of to represent the company and its great values. So we've put his name here so that people know that we've shared that content. Okay, so now with that in place, I can show you what the experience is like with a screen reader reading that content.
Van Arsdale is a name you can trust. Van Arsdale CEO, Farzan Ansari, heading level 1 Van Arsdale is growing.
Okay, so now when I read through that with the
Thanks,
screen
Michelle.
reader,
The
it is
audio,
announcing that alt text so that the audience knows what content is there and will understand the document better.
Peter,
Yes,
it's Michelle. Can you, for the next little segment where you have to play your computer, it's really, really low. Can you turn it up a little bit for the audience to hear?
sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let me do that. Did you want me to go back and play the videos again?
I think we'll be okay going forward. I haven't seen anybody else chime in on the chat, but just for going forward, it was a little hard to hear.
Got it. Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you.
So another thing you should do to make sure that your document is good for people with screen readers is to pay attention to hyperlinks and what names you give them. So for a piece of text that links to something, the visible text is what I mean by the name of the link. And when people use a screen reader, they can navigate by just the links within the document. And it's useful for the link to have something descriptive that tells you what it goes to. Like usually the title of the document or page that it links to. It's not so useful when it says click here, or if it's the URL and the URL is something very complicated with a lot of cryptic codes in it and things like that. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like. So here is reading through the document and getting to a link with the screen reader.
Heading level 1 more information https://1drb.ms/w/s. Add element available. NGJ2V2DJ4CICBM_6PG56EZ0JLBA. E equals 9 INWCC.
Okay, so some URLs look something like this with some cryptic code in it. And like if for me, just looking at this visually, I quickly see that it's gibberish, and I don't try to parse every character out of there. I sort of skip over it. I know that it links to something, and I don't know what it links to. Now, for a screen reader, what happens is it uses text to speech on this, and it doesn't gloss over it. It says, well, these aren't words. I'm going to have to read them out character by character. And it goes and does that. And so it takes it a long time to go and do that. And it's overwhelming. And it still doesn't give you any information. So it's just a really bad experience for somebody listening to this with a screen reader. So what you should do instead is apply a name here that tells us the title of the document that it links to. You can do that by going to Insert Link, and the text to display is at the top of the dialog. You can type in something there, and the address will still be the URL, but that won't be the primary thing that gets read out by the screen reader. Now, some screen readers still provide access to that URL in case the user wants to inspect it and know what that is, but it's not the primary thing that gets read. So I've changed the name now to Van Arsdale Company Report, so it's much easier to understand what it links to. And now we'll see what the experience is like with a screen reader.
Heading level 1 more information Van Arsdale Company Report.
Okay, so it says Van Arsdale Company Report, so it's very clear what I'm working with.
I'm sorry, Peter, we have one person that's saying that's still a little too low. Do you have any other control to bring it up at all?
I can increase the volume a little more.
Yeah, just a little bit. I can hear it okay, but it still is a little lower than your voice.
Okay, I've
Thank
increased
you.
it some more. So
Appreciate
hope
it. Thank you.
sure. Okay, the next thing to do to make the document work great with screen readers is to use headings, because that is the way to navigate through the document. And this is especially true if you've got something like a 500-page document. And it's not something people read from cover to cover. They might skip to chapter 7 and section 3 and read the part that they're interested in. They need a way to quickly find that and get to the part that is interesting to them. So within the document, you may use these headings and different levels to give it structure and organization. And when you use a screen reader, you can navigate by heading and skip around in the document to get to the part that you're interested in. So what I'm going to do now is use narrator scan mode and press the H key, which is for jumping to the next heading, and see what it does throughout this document.
Peter, I just have a really quick question. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No worries. Yep.
I have a couple questions really quickly regarding the screen reader. Is there a way for it to go a little slower?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Are you talking about for the video demonstrations that I'm giving?
Yes, yes, if you could please.
These are pre-recorded. I don't have an easy way to adjust them at the moment. But if you are using a screen reader yourself, the screen reader has a speed setting, so you can adjust that as whatever suits you.
Okay.
I've seen experienced screen reader users that have it at like 8 times the normal speed, I think, of speech, and are able to understand that. I've got it maybe set a little bit too fast, but yeah, you can adjust that to suit your needs. So unfortunately, I don't have an easy way to adjust the ones that are in my pre-recorded videos.
Okay.
But if you need me to play it again, I can do that.
I would appreciate that. Could you play the last one just one more time, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So you're talking about links?
Yeah, the one just right before this that we did out loud, that one would be great.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
Thank you again, Peter.
Yeah, no problem. So first, this is reading out the link that has the cryptic characters in it.
Heading level 1 more information https://1brv.ms/w/s. Add element available. NGJ2V2DJ4CICBM_6PG56EZ0JLVA. E equals 9 INWCC.
Okay, did everyone hear that okay? And then I will show you the experience after we have set the name of the link to something that tells us what it links to. In this case, it's Van Arsdale Company Report. Okay, and then here's the experience.
Heading level 1 more information Van Arsdale Company Report.
Okay, so it reads that out so you know what it links to. Was everybody able to hear that okay?
Yes, you can hear it okay. And we just want to reiterate, you can definitely adjust the speed and the volume on your own screen readers. We just wanted to have Peter show what it sounds like to get through the presentation, but there is a process that you can definitely do to adjust that. So we realize it's fast, but we're also trying to get through the training. So
Right.
appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bear with us. And another thing is oftentimes when using a screen reader, people will use a headset as well, and that can help them be able to hear what it's saying more easily. So we're talking about headings, and I'm going to use narrator in scan mode and press H to navigate through the headings in this document.
Van Arsdale is a name you can trust. Title. Van Arsdale is growing. Heading 1. Van Arsdale tops the charts. Heading 1. More information. Heading 1. Van Arsdale is for all occasions. Heading 1.
Okay, so it read through the headings, and if you paid close attention, you would see that it skipped one of them. This one that says, Van Arsdale meets your needs. Now, why did it skip that? It's a little weird. Okay, so I'm going to inspect the document to find out what's going on and see if we can fix that. So what has happened is Van Arsdale meets your needs looks like a heading, but isn't really a heading. And if you inspect it more closely, you can find that out. So one of the things that helps is turning on the navigation pane, which is kind of like an automatic table of contents in the left side of the screen. And Van Arsdale meets your needs is not in that list either. Like Word just doesn't realize that it's a heading. What happened is that text was just formatted to look like a heading and isn't really a heading. What we can do is go to the styles drop down and choose the heading style. So that's the important thing that marks it semantically as a heading and will cause it to show up in the navigation pane. If you were to add a table of contents to the document, then it would be included there as well. So it also affects the screen reader experience, and we'll see now when using narrator scan mode and pressing H how it will navigate to the heading.
Van Arsdale is a name you can trust. Title. Van Arsdale is growing. Heading 1. Van Arsdale tops the charts. Heading 1. More information. Heading 1. Van Arsdale meets your needs. Heading 1. Van Arsdale is for all occasions. Heading 1.
Okay, so now Van Arsdale meets your needs is one of the headings that we navigate to when pressing H. It matches what you see in the navigation pane. And as an author, keep in mind that you should use the styles and not just direct formatting to the headings in your document, and use the navigation pane to troubleshoot and to make sure that all of the things that you expect are marked as heading, and none of the things that you don't expect to be headings are marked as such. So that's the way to make the document structured better for easier reading with the screen reader. Next, I'll get into a few things you should keep in mind with tables to make sure that they are easy to read with a screen reader. The first is including a header row or column in each table, especially ones that are large. So if let's say you have a table with 100 rows in it, and you're reading through that, and you're trying to figure out, by the time you get to the row 76, what exactly is the thing in column 2? What does that represent? And if you can't quickly glance up to see what the heading for column 2 is, you might lose track of that. And by semantically marking these headings and including them in your table, the screen reader has an easy way to read these out so that you don't lose track of where you are as you're reading through the table. In my example, the table is small, but keep in mind this would apply to much larger tables as well. So I'm going to show you the experience reading through this with a screen reader first, without any heading row in the table.
Challenge. Opportunity selected. You aren't sure it will work when you need it to select it. Products with reliability you can trust selected. Replacement cost can be overwhelming selected. Products that stand the test of time selected.
So it's reading through the contents of the cells, and after you've read many of these, you can lose track of which one is in which column and what the meaning of these phrases is. So what you can do is go to the table. Well, you can go to check accessibility, and this will tell you about missing table headers. And there's a command to use the first row as the header row, which is the appropriate thing I want to do in this case. On the table design ribbon tab, there's also a checkbox for header row, and that does the same thing. If that is unchecked, you can check that to make that first row into a header row. Now, if you just are missing the header row entirely, there isn't a command for adding it. But what you can do is insert a regular row into the table at the beginning, and then toggle on the header row setting so that that first new row that you've inserted is the header row, and then just fill it in with whatever text you want to use as the headings. So now I will show you what the experience is reading this table with a screen reader and using keyboard shortcuts within the screen reader to read out the column heading for any cell that I'm on in case I lost track and I don't know which cell I'm on.
Challenge. Opportunity selected. You aren't sure it will work when you need it to selected. Products with reliability you can trust selected. Opportunity column header. Replacement cost can be overwhelming selected. Challenge column header.
Okay, so as I was navigating to these table cells, I'm able to press a keyboard shortcut, and I believe it's Control Shift Alt up arrow in the case of narrator, to read the column heading associated with that cell. So in case I've lost track of which column I'm in, that's an easy way to figure that out quickly.
Can you say that again? Control Shift up arrow?
I believe it's Control Alt Shift up arrow. I can check after the webinar to make sure about
Thank
that.
you.
But you can also, within narrator, press Caps F1 to access the help, and that will list all the keyboard shortcuts.
Thank you.
And other screen readers have similar keyboard shortcuts, but it may vary depending on the screen reader. And another thing you need to do with tables to make them screen reader friendly is to avoid merge cells where you can. Now, merge cells are quite useful, and if that is the best way to represent the content, then it's not necessarily a bad thing to do. But you should also kind of follow the guidance that's a lot of cases simpler is better. And if there is a way that you can communicate the information without merge cells, that just might be better for everyone involved, just to be able to understand the structure of the content and what you're trying to communicate. In this example, I have a table that has two adjacent cells on one of the rows that's merged together, and some content there, generative workspace, which is spanning the two columns to mean that it kind of belongs in both categories. And you know, some people will be able to parse that and figure out what that means, but really in this case, it's probably just more straightforward to not use a merge cell. And even if that means repeating the text generative workspace in each of the cells, that just might be an easier and simpler, more straightforward way to present the content. So just keep that in mind, and where you can simplify. Then one more topic I have is that when you are distributing your document as a PDF, which a lot of people do, you want to do save or export to create the PDF, and don't use print, because when you use print, the PDF that you generate is not accessible. The alt text or pictures, the headings, and some of the other things that I talked about earlier in this presentation aren't preserved in the process of printing that out. But when you do save or export, additional semantic information is included in the PDF that makes the screen reader experience with the PDF in the PDF viewer, as rich as it is when you're using Word itself. So I will show you quickly some examples of how to do that and some of the options that you should be aware of. So I'll start with Word for Windows. And one way to do the export is to go to File, Export, Create PDF XPS Document, and then click the Create button. And there was a yellow box there reminding me to make sure it's accessible. There's an Options button, and then there's a Document Structure Tags for Accessibility checkbox, which is already checked by default. So you normally you don't need to go there, but you might want to just double check and make sure that it's checked before you publish the PDF. And so that's how you ensure that the PDF that you generate is accessible from Word for Windows. And in Word for Mac, you can go to File, Save As, and choose PDF as the format from the dropdown. And you will get a couple of radio buttons here. And the first one that's selected by default is Best for Electronic Distribution and Accessibility. And that's the one you should choose if you want to create an accessible PDF. And that's the one that's selected by default. Okay, really good. That is, in a nutshell, how to create documents that are accessible in Word, and some of the key things that you should keep in mind when doing it, and some of the tools that are available in Word to help you with that. At the end here, I've shared some links where you can stay in touch with us and get more information and get help if you need it. The Insider program is where if you're already a Microsoft 365 subscriber and getting new versions of the apps on a frequent basis, it's like every month there's a new version that can include improvements and new features. But by joining the Insider program, you will get the new features a little bit earlier than the general population does. There's actually two different rings that you can join. One is called beta, and another one is called current current channel preview. And with either of these, you will get the builds earlier than others and find out about these new features. And there's also a blog that will explain some of these new features. And it's a great chance to try them out. And you are able to give feedback on them and make sure that you're heard before these features are finalized and included in the product for everybody. And the product teams listen to this, and it's quite common for them to go and make adjustments to the features based on the feedback that's received, before they're finalized and put into the product. You can also submit your feedback through the app. There's a feedback command on the help ribbon and I believe it's also on the file menu as well. And when you submit a report that way, the product team is able to read that and understand any feedback you have, whether it's something that you liked about the feature or something that you didn't like or a problem that you experienced. And that can really help help us make the product better. And then there is the Enterprise Disability Answer Desk and Disability Answer Desk, which are support lines for people with disabilities that know how to use screen readers. They have ASL and other accommodations on support line itself, and then they can help you with any questions you have about the accessibility of the products. And in case they are bugs in the products themselves, help escalate that to the product team so that they're aware of that. And there is also an annual conference hosted by Microsoft about accessibility called the Ability Summit. And it's an absolutely fantastic event where the leaders and many special guests invited will speak about what's happening in the space and new developments and new features and trends and how it's being used in the real world. So you can take a look at recordings of the most recent Ability Summit at this link, and you can stay tuned for when the next live event will happen, I believe in March. But closer to the dates, at this link, you'll get information about the event and how you can join.
That's awesome, Peter. Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been great. If you have time, we would love to do some questions. We have a couple in the Q&A. There was a follow-up early on. Is there a difference when you're working with the Microsoft 2016 versions versus this one that we recently went over?
There are, 2016, that was 8 years ago. A lot of improvements that have been made since then. So if you get a Microsoft 365 subscription, that's the easiest way to stay up to date on the version and have all the latest improvements. I don't have a complete list off the top of my head, but in that 8 years of time, a lot of improvements have been made.
And then if we rename a link, will the screen reader say this links to blah, 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 or so on and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So in the case of a text link, it's the visible text is also the name that's announced by the screen reader. If the link is on a graphical object, then the alt text that you apply to that graphical object is also used as the name of the link. And the recommendation is for that to be the title of the page or document that you're linking to.
That's great. Thank you, Peter. We have another one. Sometimes when you export Word to PDF, the whole format goes off. Is there a way to prevent that?
You're talking about like the fonts or like how it looks visually, or something about the structure and the tags for accessibility?
I would assume, Samantha, if you had a follow-up for that, go ahead and throw that in the chat really quick. But I would assume the format itself, so probably the content and how it's laid out.
Okay. One of the reasons might be the font. Maybe a different font was used at the time that it was rendered to PDF. One thing that might help with that is embedding the font, or maybe using one of the fonts that's provided by within Microsoft Word. More recent versions use what are called cloud fonts, where in addition to the maybe couple dozen fonts that are installed with Word. There's many more. I think it's in the hundreds that are available through a cloud service, and those can also be used. And the nice thing about those fonts is that if you share the document with somebody else who's also using a recent version of Word, they'll be able to access that font from the cloud service, and the document will render the same way for them. If you use a custom font, then there could be some more challenges to making sure that it renders the same way for everyone, and sometimes something like font embedding will help with that type of scenario. But it depends on the font that you're using and what rights you have with the license that you purchased for the font.
That's great. Thank you, Peter. We have another one. If there's a lot of tables or someone has a lot of tables on a document, can they use these exact, or not exact, but these similar accessibility features on Excel, or should they generally try to stick with Word?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Excel has a lot of accessibility features as well. As far as which one to use, it's a matter of the type of content and maybe your audience and your preferences. Yeah, Excel has its strengths with numbers and extremely large tables, and sometimes spreadsheets are very wide with lots of columns. Which, if you go back to my advice about reflow, if that's the best way to present that content, maybe it's unavoidable that people will have to be scrolling out both vertically and horizontally to consume that content. But at least the Excel sheet is sort of optimized for that task, so you can easily navigate around within there. Within a document, it's a little more cumbersome, and most people expect the document to be something that fits horizontally and something that you only have to scroll vertically. So, the size and shape of the content may be a factor as to whether Word or Excel is a better way to present the content. But yeah, it often comes down to preference and what types of things you are doing. With numbers and charts and doing analysis, Excel is strong at that, and a lot of people prefer to use it for those types of things.
That's great. Thank you. That was a great question too. Thank you. So which doc would have more accessibility features, a Word doc or a PDF?
Oh, that is a great question. So in either case, you need to follow the guidelines that I presented here to make sure that the source content is accessible. Because if you don't add alt text to your picture, then whether you distribute a Word doc or a PDF, either way, the picture is not accessible. Converting to PDF does not magically fix the accessibility problems. Now, what we've tried to do is make sure that whatever measures you've taken to make the document content accessible in Word is preserved in the process of exporting it to PDF. Now, some people, when they have found some deficiencies in how it mapped to PDF, or want to go a step further, they may have gone into a practice of remediating the accessibility of the PDF directly, which is takes some know-how to do and takes some time and skill. But that might be what you need to do to meet very demanding accessibility requirements for how the documents are shared and published. So I mean, you have at least have some ability to do that, though I would say it's difficult part of the workflow to be doing that after having exported the document as PDF. But that type of thing is possible if needed. In either case, really, what's important is following the practices that is described here to make sure that the source content is accessible.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
And then another follow-up question. When you're referencing embedding font, would you mind going to a little bit of an explanation on what that means?
Oh, yes. I may need to do a follow-up on that just to make sure that I've got I can get you to the right articles and get you to all the right places in order to do that. But yeah, something you can look up in our help to just learn more about in general. And there's a lot of details to go through there. So for example, some types of fonts have restrictions on how they can be used, and so they might not allow embedding. So those are some of the things to look out for when you're using something like font embedding.
And when you say font embedding, like if you were to just give a definition on what that means, what do you mean by embedding font?
Oh, yes. So that is including a copy of the font file in the document itself. So rather than relying on the other computers where the document is opened to have that font installed, you no longer are relying on that because there is a copy of the font in the document itself. And with some of these scenarios, like in Word for Mac, when you are exporting as PDF with the Best for Electronic Inaccessibility option, the document is sent to a cloud service. And that is where the export to PDF actually happens. So it's not locally on your Mac. It's in a Windows-based server in the cloud where that's happening, and embedding the font will ensure that it's available there in the cloud as well as it was when you were authoring the document on your Mac.
Interesting. Thank you, Peter.
Mhm.
I'll keep a lookout for that embedding font link, and I can include that in the follow-up as well if anybody's
Okay.
interested.
Yep.
And then does Microsoft have their own PDF viewer and editor?
Um, So there are some tools for PDF. The main one would be in terms of reading PDF is that it's built into the Edge browser. So that's one option you can use. And as far as editing PDF, um, we don't have something that is really optimized for that task of getting into every feature of PDF that is there. But Microsoft Word does have some ability to import PDF and map it to the native features of Word. Now that's not going to preserve everything about the layout and formatting and content within that PDF. So it's not meant as something where you take any arbitrary PDF and you can, make modifications to it. It's not that type of application. But if you are trying to create a new document based on an existing PDF, that might, be a good option to consider. And it'll do that import so that you don't have to, I don't retype it or copy paste bits of it. It's a little more efficient than doing something like that if you want to base your new document on that existing content.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any more questions? These are all really great questions. While we have Peter. If not, if you think of any, oh, here we go. So to verify earlier, for print to PDF, it is incompatible with screen readers.
Yeah, so what's happening is the whole process of printing is rendering graphics in a way that can be printed on a printer, and that process doesn't include things like alt text. That's not part of the visual that's included in that type of protocol. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you are printing. That's just not the way to produce an accessible PDF. So as I was recommending within Word for Windows, you can use either export or save. In Word for Mac, it's just in the save as dialog where you have the option to choose PDF as a format. In Word for the web, it's under download as PDF. And so any of those options will preserve the accessibility of the PDF, as long as you don't choose the option that where it doesn't. But if you at the default settings, it will include what are called PDF UA tags, which will make it accessible to screen readers.
Lovely. That was a piece of information that I found particularly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Really great information to know, Peter. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Let me see. I think I got a question pop up in the Q&A. So when using Word to create flyer content, how do layers play into accessibility? Do they factor in at all, as in like placing images behind text or in front, etc.?
Oh, that is a great question. Yeah, what I would say is that you want to be mindful of what order the content gets read in, and if you have a composition of many objects, what uh, what might be more meaningful for the person who's consuming that with a screen reader is not the individual objects themselves, but the composition as a whole. And if you can group the elements together that are in the composition into one object or maybe a picture, then you can add alt text to that one object that describes the composition as a whole. Sometimes just describing the elements that are in the composition might not be enough to really convey the meaning, because the position and how they're overlapping and composing with each other is part of uh, what comprises the visual and conveys the information, and that gets lost when you're just describing the individual elements. So that's something to keep in mind. It depends on how you've composed your content, but when it does involve layering a lot of objects together, this technique of grouping or creating a picture may be helpful to make that content accessible.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any more questions while we're hitting this Q&A? These are all great information and great follow-ups. All right. Well, if you think of any, shoot it in the Q&A. Send it my way. Send it via this information and links. We have a lot of avenues. So if you think of any questions or anything, please let us know and we will communicate with Peter on this.
Yes, and if there are any questions about accessibility in general, or any of the topics that I covered in the previous webinar about accessibility features and assistive technologies that help you use Word, be happy to address them now, or give you any sort of guidance with any of those topics as well.
If anybody's interested, go ahead and shoot it in the chat. I don't think you necessarily need to go through Q&A. I will give everyone some time to maybe think on that and throw it in the chat. Sometimes it takes a second.
Yeah.
Think on that.
And if we have some time, I'd love to know any experiences people would like to share about Word or about accessibility, about creating content. Like if they've had a previous experience, either good or bad, where the accessibility or lack of accessibility in their document affected people that they were trying to communicate with, and what were some of the outcomes and what were some of the learnings from these types of experiences.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead and throw that in the chat, y'all. While we think and type, we do have another question. When arranging tag structure in PDF from a Word document, layers can shift around and background block images might cover the text. Is there a solution to that? Or such as like when you're using white text with a dark blue box for contrast in the background, could a PDF structure, oh, okay, so Ian was wondering if we might be able to go over a PDF structure webinar in the future, and kind of maybe break that down if you'd be interested, Peter.
Yeah, it's a great topic. It's something that we've been looking at a lot recently, and we've made a lot of improvements in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint and how they generate these PDF UA tags to preserve the accessibility in the documents. So to get back to the question you had just before that about layering, I would say that it's not one of Word's strengths in general, because what happens is you are trying to mix two different things, which is the Word document itself primarily was meant to reflow, so that if you increase your font size or you make the page width narrower or increase the margins or whatever, all that text is going to wrap differently and lay out differently, and it may take up 10 lines rather than 8 lines as you make these adjustments. So you've got that going on at the same time as positioning elements in a 2D manner, certain number of inches from the top left corner of the page, for example. And those two things just kind of don't work that great together, I would say. And if you are looking for that type of 2D composition, I'd just recommend another type of app for that. PowerPoint, maybe Visio. Those types of apps that are more geared towards a 2D canvas for doing those types of compositions. And then you could create pictures that you import into Word, for example, or copy paste. So that might be a better way of going about composing some of those types of content. And within PowerPoint, in a PowerPoint slide, you just wouldn't expect the content to reflow. It's kind of meant, it's kind of, hardwired to a specific 2D layout. And that way you have control over it, and you know that the text isn't going to wrap differently or shift position or whatever within that slide, and then you can bring over that slide as a graphic that you put in your document.
That's awesome. And I think that was a great question, Ian, as well as I think that's a great recommendation for a future webinar on specifically PDF. A lot of us do in our work use PDFs for sending purposes, and that'd be really great to learn a little bit more about that. Okay, we have some feedback, Peter.
Oh, great.
So one of our attendees wishes that Microsoft 365 volume could go even higher, because sometimes being a little bit hard of hearing, it may not be a primary disability, but it might slowly start to have the need to increase the volume. So there's some feedback there.
Okay. Just to understand that a little bit better, is it the audio for the screen reader or for read aloud, or what exactly? Because with volume, I think it's a matter of your operating system, which controls the audio output, and your devices. And there's some settings there to adjust it, and maybe getting a different type of device can help as well.
I believe while you were doing the read aloud,
Mm-hmm.
it was a little challenging to hear, and even at its highest, it was still not super loud. So maybe that, I don't know if that has any effect of how far it is from your own, if there's anything with your computer or with ours. But
Oh.
I could tell you that it was likely during that portion because it was a little low.
Oh, okay. My apologies. That may have to do with how I recorded or how I presented here. But if you are using those features directly, typically you have control of within the app and within the operating system to adjust the volume, and you can get better speakers if you need to have it play louder if needed.
So if the volume for, say, the volume for Microsoft 365 in general is at its absolute max volume, computer is at its max volume, what would you recommend to get it even louder?
At that point, you might need better hardware. So maybe a shop for some better speakers, and or hook it up to an audio amplifier, and you can have it very loud if needed.
Okay, so there are some options. I know.
Or a headset. That's another option. To just maybe it's not louder, but just closer to your ear. That might help as well.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a question and then some more feedback. So with Mac, are we able to change the default font style and size in Word as well?
Yes, that is managed through what's called your normal .dot file. That's like the default template that's used in Word, and there's some help articles that explain that process. But basically, you apply the formatting and you save it into your normal .dot, and then new documents that you create that are based on that will use those settings, and so you can customize that for yourself.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And then let's get back to some feedback, if you wouldn't mind. So we have just some general feedback. I'm glad that I learned about the read aloud feature. This user has used Kurzweil 3000 that was given to them in college, which helped them to write essays. The read aloud feature presented is a good alternative to Kurzweil.
Oh, great. I'm really glad to hear the feedback on that. There is a lot of neat functionality within the immersive reader. I only touched on it, but one of the directions that they've been working on recently is for it to be a kind of a reading coach for you. That it's kind of a combination of you reading and it reading for you that can help you to become a better reader, and it can assess your reading and track your progress. And so if you're learning a new language, it could be very helpful in that regard. And it's been used in a lot of schools for that type of activity. So really great. It's definitely explore the feature to kind of learn all of the things that it's capable of doing.
That's great. Great feedback. We have some more feedback. Oh my goodness. As a low vision consumer, they're wondering if Microsoft accessibility recommendations notes problem with color red being used in text as attention grabber when it actually can make text unreadable. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point. There is, at least in Excel, because it was kind of hardwired into the design of Excel, like red was used for negative numbers, things like that. There now is a rule built into the accessibility assistant in Excel to flag that as a warning. Now, I talked about how communicating information using color alone is an accessibility issue. That unfortunately isn't one in general that is flagged by the accessibility assistant. It doesn't understand enough about the intent of how you use the colors to really know precisely when you've violated that rule. So that is something you just have to be mindful of as you design your content. It's best if you just avoid it in the first place. But if you didn't create document and you're trying to fix it for somebody else and want to know if they had done something like that, the technique that I showed today, where you turn on the grayscale filter, is one technique that's handy. Because as soon as you turn it on, you will start to feel the pain yourself. You will start reading the content and say, I don't understand what's going on here. And that it's just putting you kind of in the customer's shoes and seeing what the experience is like for them, and you'll notice the problems. And once you notice them, then you can go back and think about how you should redesign your content to avoid the problem. So that's one recommendation I have around that. I think it's a longer term effort to kind of figure out if Excel can kind of get to the core of the problem and not have, red color formatting for negative numbers and things like that so hardwired into the app. That is, I guess, sort of a mistake made long, long ago that is deeply ingrained into the product and into how people are used to using the product. And unfortunately, it's a hard process of unwinding that and undoing it. We have to retrain a lot of people to present their content in a different way. So hopefully we'll get there one day, but for now, unfortunately, it is still baked into Excel and something you have to watch out for.
That's a great question too. That was very interesting. Thank you, Peter. And thank you for asking the question. That was a good.
Yeah, thank you.
Are all of the accessibility features that were available and shown today included in the free version?
Yes. Well, okay. So, they're included in a Microsoft 365 subscription, which is not free, but it doesn't require any additional licenses or fees above what's in a Microsoft 365 subscription. So hope that makes sense. Yeah, there's no add-ons or other things to buy to access all the features that I showed today. A lot of the ones I showed in the last session were actually features of the operating system, and I demoed a lot of the ones in Windows, and macOS has similar ones as well. Those come with the operating system. They don't require any additional purchases. So you can use all of those with your apps, and they work great with an app like Word. So you definitely want to take advantage of those.
That's great.
Yep.
We have some feedback, some sharing. We have some time, so I'll try to get through all of these. Someone shared that currently a new process is being implemented where there are two versions of a document, like for a newsletter. One print version with QR code that leads to a second digital version PDF that is tagged with a good reading order or as best as possible for download.
Oh, great.
That's good. Thank you for letting us know, Ian.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Should we? Okay, so this was kind of answered by another attendee who said, yes, please avoid using emojis or label them. But someone asked, should they avoid using emojis in accessible materials? If they do use them, is there a way to label them with alt text?
That is a great question. I don't have any particular advice about it. I would think in most cases, text to speech would be able to read them as the names of the characters. I would just say in case there's any sort of if there's any subtlety to understanding what it means, it might be better if you just spell it out in simple language. Yeah, I know they're very commonly used in text messages and tweets where you are typing on the phone or you have a limited space or whatever. At least within a document authored on a computer with a keyboard, maybe you don't have quite all those constraints and you can just type out the words, and that just might be a more straightforward way of communicating whatever it is you're trying to say, including expressing your your sentiment or emotions about something, you could be doing that in words as well.
Yeah, sounds like it's probably more accessible to just go ahead and write out how you're feeling.
Yeah, no, I don't think you have to avoid them entirely. I do believe in most cases the name of the emoji character should be read by the screen reader. But yeah, with using regular words, it might just there might just be a lower chance that it's misunderstood, I would say.
That's great. Thank you. That's a really good question. Some feedback. The information or feedback on creating grouped images and applying them to the Word document was appreciated. So thank you, Peter.
Oh, thank you. Great. Yeah. A lot of people use grouping for kind of graphical purposes. I would say they're like wanted to move the objects as a unit or resize them as a unit, and that's all fine to do. Now, sometimes that also provides the semantic structure. But in case it doesn't, or in case you didn't have a need to group them for these graphical reasons, consider applying it's sort of like the headings that I talked about. Headings provided this hierarchy and structure to the words in your document. Grouping is sort of the same principle on the graphical objects. It's applying hierarchy and structure to them. So if you've got 10 objects that compose a diagram or an illustration, and that is one unit, can really consider grouping that to express that relationship, and then applying alt text to the group, and that'll help people understand, what that content is.
That's great information.
Yep.
Thank you. We have about 3 more minutes. I really want to get through this last bit of feedback, and then we have a couple announcements. So I'm going to go through this, and then hopefully we can get through it. Some feedback. In June 2024, Adobe, so a different company, but still very relevant to what we're doing here. A reader had a bug that affected screen readers in navigating to form fields on PDF documents. The bug wouldn't recognize existing form fields or change the existing form field reading order. Due to Adobe being the only accessible PDF editor that works with screen readers, this user was in the mercy of them fixing the bug to continue their work on PDF documents. So very relevant to what we're doing and learning here today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. None of the Microsoft apps are kind of geared toward specifically something like authoring a PDF form. But I will say that if you are creating the kind of documents that Word can create, and what we've tried to make sure that if you want to publish that in PDF format, that will work well, and that all the accessibility that you put into the document is preserved when you use PDF. But it isn't really geared as like a general purpose PDF authoring tool or editor, I would say, really for taking Word documents and mapping them to PDF.
Great feedback, though. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter. I want to get a couple announcements out because we're going to see Peter again in January. So I want to make sure that everyone here today has access to that. If you have anything else, please shoot it our way. We'll relay it to Peter and vice versa. But again, thank you so much, Peter, for today.
Thank you so much. It's great to have such an engaged audience. Please use what you've learned today to help make all the documents and content that you create and share with others accessible, so that you include everybody in your communications and collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you. So really quick, we got about a minute. I just wanted to let everyone know that we do have an upcoming one again with Peter, January 7th at 2 p.m. This one is navigating accessibility features in Microsoft PowerPoint. Super excited about that. So go ahead. It's going to be in the chat. Go ahead and register for that. As well, I'll include it in the follow-up email if you can't access the chat. we have some recordings from the last recording. We'll send that out, but we'll drop that in the chat. We have a latest and greatest series with Braze Mobility that we did in November. We'll drop that in the chat as well. But if you want to go and explore any of our other videos, go ahead and just check out our YouTube playlists. We have a lot of those. We have the connecting, and then that's about it. I can send any other information or links in the follow-up. But thank you everyone for being here today. Very great feedback, very great information, Peter. I appreciate everyone here. And happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
See you all hopefully in January.
Bye. Thank you.